Okay, kids, it's story time. And this time, our first story is going to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And that's from my Disney Classic Storybook, of course. So let's get started. Once there was a lovely princess named Snow White. She lived in a castle with her stepmother, a beautiful but wicked queen. The queen was very jealous of Snow White and forced her to work as a servant. Each day the wicked queen looked into her mirror and asked, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror usually answered that the queen was the fairest, which pleased her. Meanwhile, Snow White did her chores and made friends with the courtyard doves. One day, a prince heard Snow White singing. He was enchanted by her. The queen saw this, and she became angry. Then the magic mirror told her that Snow White was now the fairest in the land. The queen was furious. She ordered the huntsman to take the princess, to take the princess into the forest and do away with her. The next day, the huntsman went for a walk with Snow White. But she was so kind and gentle, the huntsman couldn't bring himself to harm her. Instead, he warned the princess about the queen's plan. He told her to run away, and Snow White didn't look back. She ran further into the dark forest, alone and scared. Poor Snow White. Finally, Snow White came to a clearing. She fell to the ground and began to cry. "What do I need to do now?" she wondered. The woodland animals watched the girl, and slowly they came out from their hiding places to comfort her. When Snow White saw them, she smiled through her tears. "Everything's going to be all right," she said. "But I do need a place to sleep at night." Some of the birds whistled for Snow White to follow them, and they led her through the forest. Soon, Snow White and the animals came to a tiny cottage. "Oh, it's adorable!" Snow White cried. "Just like a doll's house." She peeked inside. It looked as if no one was home. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes, and everything was covered with dust. Snow White decided that 7 little children must live in the cottage. She noticed 7 tiny chairs. "Maybe they have no mother," Snow White said to the animals. Inside the cottage, Snow White swept the floor while animals washed the dishes. Before long, everything was shining like new. Upstairs, Snow White found 7 little beds. Each one had a name carved on it. "Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Dopey. What funny names for children," Snow White exclaimed. "Grumpy, Bashful, and Sleepy. I'm a little sleepy myself," she said, yawning. With that, she sank down across the little beds and fell asleep. In the meantime, the 7 dwarfs marched through the woods. They had been hard at work, mining for diamonds all day. Now they were on their way home. As they caught sight of their cottage, they stopped short. Something was very strange. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the door was open. "Something's in there," they cried. "What'll we do?" They went inside to investigate and were shocked to find the place so clean. Suddenly they heard a sound coming from upstairs. The 7 dwarfs tiptoed up the steps. When they reached the foot of their beds, they peeked over and saw Snow White asleep on their beds. "Why, it's a girl," said one of the dwarfs. Just then Snow White woke up. "How do you do?" she said, surprised to see the little man staring at her. Snow White described what had happened to her, and the dwarfs told her she could stay with them. After dinner that night, the dwarfs played music and danced with Snow White. She was so happy that she almost forgot about the queen and her evil plan. Back at the castle, though, the queen did not know Snow White was still alive. "Magic mirror on the wall, who is now the fairest one of all?" she asked. "In the cottage of the 7 dwarfs dwells Snow White, fairest one of all," the mirror answered. The queen was enraged. She came up with a plan. The queen hurried down to a cave beneath the palace. She used her magic to disguise herself as an old peddler woman. There she is. Ew. Then she searched for a spell to use on Snow White. "Ah, a poison apple," she exclaimed. "Sleeping death. One taste, and Snow White's eyes will close forever." She climbed into a small boat and headed downstream toward the dwarf's cottage. The next morning, Snow White said goodbye to the 7 dwarfs as they went off to work. "Don't let anyone or anything into the house," Grumpy warned her. Then the dwarfs marched off to the mine. From the shadows of the nearby trees, the queen watched the dwarfs leave. Then she walked up to the cottage, still disguised. When Snow White saw the old peddler woman, she wasn't afraid. She felt sorry for her. Then Snow White noticed the delicious-looking red apples in the women's basket. "Like to try one?" asked the queen. The birds tried to warn Snow White, but she didn't notice. Look at them chirping around. She didn't know that the peddler was really the queen. Snow White took the poison apple and bit into it. Immediately, she fell to the cottage floor. The animals ran to get the 7 dwarfs. The dwarfs hurried home from the mine, but they were too late. The poison apple had put Snow White into a deep sleep. The dwarfs saw the queen running away, and so they chased her through the woods until she fell off a cliff and disappeared forever. When the dwarfs returned home, they built a coffin of glass in the forest for Snow White. Heartbroken, they kept watch over her night and day. After some time, the prince who had heard Snow White singing at the castle rode by. When he saw her, he knew that she was his true love. He knelt beside her and kissed her. Snow White awoke at once. The spell was broken. Snow White thanked the dwarfs for all they had done to help her. She gave each of them a kiss and rode off with her prince. They lived happily ever after. The end. Now I'm going to read you a story from Disney's 2-Minute Goodnight Stories. And this one is called Grumpy Learns a Lesson. Snow White was in the kitchen when she heard a loud voice from upstairs. "Why do I always have to go last?" It was Grumpy again. It seemed that no matter what side of the bed he got up on lately, it was the wrong side. Before long, the 7 dwarfs were all seated around the table, ready to have breakfast. Snow White took special care in preparing Grumpy's plate. She gave him extra eggs, bacon, and toast. But as soon as she set his plate down, Grumpy said, "Scrambled eggs again? And why don't we ever have sausage? I'm tired of bacon." The other dwarfs looked at each other. "Looks like it's going to be one of Grumpy's bad days again," whispered Bashful. After breakfast, the 7 dwarfs started out for work. "Why do I always have to carry the heaviest shovel?" Grumpy complained. See him up there with the shovel? "It wouldn't be so heavy if you carried it with both hands," said Happy. "That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard," said Grumpy. "I'm working by myself today," he added. "That way there won't be anyone to bother me." The other dwarfs found a spot in the mine where they could all work together. And there's Grumpy back by himself. "I wonder what's wrong with Grumpy," said Sleepy, yawning. "He's grumpier than ever." "I have no idea," said Doc. "Let's give Grumpy a taste of his own medicine." Meanwhile, Grumpy worked alone in a different part of the mine. Suddenly, he heard the other dwarfs shouting. "I wonder what's going on," he said. Grumpy went to join the other dwarfs, and there he saw them all arguing loudly. Look at him, mad, yelling. Grumpy said, he heard, "It's your turn to dig," Doc yelled at Sleepy. "Stop bumping me," Happy shouted at Dopey. Grumpy couldn't believe his ears. "Hey, what's the matter?" he asked. "Oh, be quiet," the other dwarfs said in unison. Although Grumpy tried to stop them, the other dwarfs complained loudly all the way home. When Snow White heard them, she realized at once that they were trying to teach Grumpy a lesson. "It's not very nice when people complain and argue," Snow White said to Grumpy. "Boy, you can say that again," Grumpy agreed. The other dwarfs looked at Grumpy. Suddenly, Grumpy realized why they had been behaving so badly. "I guess I have been pretty grumpy," he said in an embarrassed voice. "I'm sorry I got so carried away." "We forgive you, Grumpy," said the other dwarfs. "Now let's eat dinner," said Grumpy. "And I'd like to help you get everything ready," he told Snow White with a smile. Aww, the end. Now we're going to read Pinocchio, because that came after Snow White. Long ago, in a little village, a wood carver named Geppetto made a wooden puppet. It looked so much like a real boy that Geppetto gave the puppet a name, Pinocchio. The old man happily danced around his workshop and showed the puppet to his cat, Figaro, and his goldfish, Cleo. As Geppetto celebrated, a tiny traveler named Jiminy Cricket slipped into the workshop. The cricket needed a warm place to sleep that night. He watched as Geppetto set the puppet down and gazed out the window at the night sky. "The wishing star," Geppetto cried. He looked at it hopefully. "I wish that my little Pinocchio might be a real boy." Soon Geppetto, Figaro, Cleo, and Jiminy Cricket fell asleep. There's the little cat and the fish sleeping away. Before long, a shimmering light filled the workshop and woke up Jiminy Cricket. It was the Blue Fairy. She had heard Geppetto's wish. "Little puppet made of pine, awake!" commanded the Blue Fairy. She waved a magic wand over Pinocchio, and the puppet came to life. But Pinocchio was not a real boy yet. First, he had to prove that he was brave, truthful, and unselfish. Knowing Pinocchio would need help, the Blue Fairy made Jiminy Cricket the puppet's conscience. The cricket would help him choose between right and wrong. Geppetto was delighted to discover that Pinocchio could walk and talk. The old man wanted to be a good father, so he sent Pinocchio to school. Along the way, Pinocchio met a fox named Honest John and a cat named Gideon. Honest John and Gideon. Pinocchio told them where he was going. "School?" Honest John said. "Then you haven't heard of the easy road to success. I'm speaking, my boy, of the theater." Uh-oh. Look at Jiminy Cricket. He said no. Honest John took Pinocchio to Stromboli. This is Stromboli, who owned a traveling puppet show. Stromboli paid the fox money for the puppet. That night, Pinocchio sang and danced in Stromboli's show. See, here he is. The crowd cheered and threw money into the stage, but Jiminy Cricket, who was in the audience, was worried. There's Jiminy Cricket up there. Later, Stromboli locked Pinocchio in a cage. "This will be your home," he said. "You will make lots of money for me." Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket were very upset. How would the puppet ever escape? Luckily, the Blue Fairy arrived. But when she asked Pinocchio why he had missed school, he lied. So his nose grew a little bit. Each time she asked Pinocchio a question, he lied. And each lie, his nose grew longer and longer. The Blue Fairy reminded him to always tell the truth if he wanted to become a real boy. "Oh, I will," Pinocchio promised. The Blue Fairy fixed his nose, and then she set him free. Going home, Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket ran into Honest John again. He got Pinocchio to go to Pleasure Island this time. Jiminy Cricket warned Pinocchio not to go, but the puppet just wanted to have fun. He didn't think about Geppetto or that he might get worried when Pinocchio didn't come home. On Pleasure Island, Pinocchio made friends with a boy named Lampwick. Together, they explored the island. There were rides and treats, and the boys could do anything they wanted. They got into all kinds of trouble, but they didn't care. Then, after several days, Lampwick and Pinocchio each sprouted ears and a tail. Look at Pinocchio. They started turning into donkeys. The coachman who ran the island shouted at them, "You boys have had your fun. Now pay for it." When Lampwick changed completely into a donkey, Jiminy Cricket knew that he had to get Pinocchio off the island fast. So they're running away. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket finally escaped. They rushed back to Geppetto's house. When they arrived, it was empty. Just then, the Blue Fairy sent down a letter that fell from the sky. It explained that Geppetto had gone to look for Pinocchio. While he was at sea, The woodcarver's ship had been swallowed by a whale named Monstro. Geppetto was living in Monstro's belly. "I'm going to find him," Pinocchio said to Jiminy Cricket. Pinocchio ran until he got to the ocean. Then he jumped in. Jiminy Cricket was right behind him. The pair began to search. Whenever they asked other sea creatures about Monstro, they quickly swam away. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket began to think that the whale must be very scary. Meanwhile, Geppetto was fishing in Monstro's stomach. The whale had been asleep for days and had not swallowed any fish, which meant Geppetto, Figaro, and Cleo had nothing to eat. Still, all the woodcarver could think of was Pinocchio. Look how sad he looks. Nearby in the ocean, a school of tuna swam frantically toward Pinocchio. He was puzzled. Then he saw Monstro. The enormous whale had awakened. Pinocchio tried to swim away, but Monstro swallowed him up. Moments later, Geppetto pulled Tuna onto the deck of his ship, with Pinocchio clutching its tail. "Father!" Pinocchio cried. "I'm so happy to see you," Geppetto said, hugging his son. "I came to save you," said Pinocchio. But Geppetto told him there was no escape. Nothing could get past Monstro's huge teeth. Pinocchio had an idea. They would build a huge fire with lots of smoke so the whale would sneeze and open its mouth. As the fire grew, Pinocchio, Geppetto, Cleo, and Figaro climbed onto a raft. Monstro's mouth started to open. "Achoo!" The whale sneezed them into the ocean. "We made it!" shouted Pinocchio. Monstro was furious. He chased after the raft and smashed into it. The raft broke into pieces, knocking everyone into the water. Pinocchio grabbed Geppetto and swam. Just as Monstro was about to swallow them again, Pinocchio pulled Geppetto into a small cave in the rocks. He had saved his father. When Geppetto woke up, he was on the beach. Figaro, Cleo, and Jiminy Cricket were nearby, but they did not see Pinocchio. Jiminy Cricket found the wooden puppet lying among the rocks. Geppetto carried his son home in his arms, convinced he had lost Pinocchio forever. Back in his workshop, Geppetto set Pinocchio on the bed and wept. Then the blue fairy appeared. "Awake," the blue fairy said, waving her wand. Pinocchio had proven himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. Pinocchio opened his eyes. His donkey ears and tail had disappeared. Even better, he no longer looked like a puppet. "Father, I'm alive," he shouted, "and I'm a real boy." "This calls for a celebration," cried Geppetto. He and Pinocchio danced happily, and Geppetto's wish had come true at last, to have a real boy. The end. Okay, kids, now we're going to read Bambi. One spring morning, a deer was born in a thicket in the woods. A bird saw the tiny fawn with his mother and ran to tell the other animals. Soon rabbits and squirrels scurried toward the thicket Robins and bluebirds settled onto the surrounding bushes. "Wake up, friend owl," a rabbit called. "It's happened. The new prince is born." So the owl yawned and made his way to the thicket too. When he arrived, the baby deer stood up for the very first time. All the animals were excited. See, there's the owl that woke up. Here's little Bambi. The fawn's legs were stiff and shaky. The baby deer swayed as he walked. "He's kind of wobbly, isn't he?" a young rabbit named Thumper said. He asked the deer's mother what the fawn's name was. "Well, I think I'll call him Bambi," she answered. "Bambi?" Thumper repeated. "Yep, I guess that'll do all right." As Bambi became sleepy, the animals left the thicket. The young prince lay down and took a nap. See, there's Thumper. When Bambi woke up, he joined his mother for a walk through the woods. Chipmunks and possums greeted him excitedly. "Good morning, young prince," they each said. Bambi couldn't talk yet, but he smiled. Finally, Bambi and his mother met Thumper and his sisters. The bunnies wanted Bambi to play with them. Together they ran through the forest and hopped over branches. Thump, thump. When the bunnies jumped over a log, Bambi tried too. Thump, thud. He got stuck. Poor little Bambi, stuck. After all, it was the fawn's first try. He just needed some practice. Bambi untangled his legs and stood up. Thumper and his sisters cheered. Then they saw something. "Those are birds," Thumper told Bambi. "Bird," Bambi sounded out slowly. It was his first word. The bunnies were happy, and Bambi was so excited that he repeated the word over and over. "Bird, bird, bird." When Bambi saw a yellow butterfly, he called out, "Bird!" "No," Thumper corrected him. "That's not a bird. That's a butterfly." Oh, how pretty. Look at the butterfly. And the birds too, butterflies. So they're all together. So Bambi's just learning. He got confused. Bambi followed the butterfly for a while. Then it flew into some flowers. Bambi pranced after it. "Butterfly!" he cried at the ground. "No," Thumper said. "That's a flower. It's pretty." Thumper pushed his nose into the petals and sniffed, and Bambi did the same. But suddenly, he drew back. His nose had touched something warm and furry. Just then, a small black and white head peeked out. "Flower!" Bambi called proudly. The furry creature was a skunk. He blushed at Bambi, and Thumper laughed and laughed. "That's not a flower," he exclaimed. "He's a little—" "Oh, that's all right," the skunk said. "He can call me Flower if he wants to. I don't mind." "Pretty," Bambi said. "Pretty flower." "Gosh," the skunk said, pleased. No one had ever called him pretty before. From that day on, the skunk was always known as Flower. By midsummer, Bambi's mother decided that the fawn was ready to visit the meadow. Bambi walked to the edge of the forest. There was a sunny field, and he wanted to run out into it. "Bambi, wait!" the doe called. "You must never rush out on the meadow. There might be danger." Bambi's mother took a few steps forward. She listened and sniffed the air. "It's all right," she said finally. Then the two went exploring. Not long after, Bambi and his mother came to a pond. Bambi looked into the water, and he saw his reflection for the first time, and he was amazed. All of a sudden, Bambi saw another deer's reflection in the water. Bambi was startled. He jumped back. Then he realized that there was a fawn standing beside him. Her name was Feline. "Hello, Bambi," Feline said. She smiled, but Bambi did not answer. Bambi backed away from Feline. He ran to his mother and leaned against her. "You're not afraid, are you?" Bambi's mother asked. Bambi shook his head. Then he looked at Feline. "Hello," he said shyly. Feline giggled and licked his cheek. Bambi ran away as fast as he could, but Feline chased after him. The fawns raced all over the meadow that afternoon. The two were soon great friends. They played together for the rest of the summer. Over time, autumn arrived. The weather began to get colder. The forest leaves turned red and orange. It rained more often, and the wind blew harder. The trees began to shed their leaves, and soon all the branches were bare. The forest looked very different. One cold day, Bambi woke up to find everything covered in white. "It's snow," his mother explained. "Winter has come." Bambi stepped out from the thicket. His feet sank into the snow. It was cold and wet and all so new to him. Bambi was delighted. He met Thumper at a frozen pond. The rabbit thumped his foot against the solid ice. "Look," Thumper said, "the water's stiff." Then Thumper took a running jump and slid across the pond. Bambi tried to follow, but his legs shot out from under him. Plop! He fell on the ice and knocked into Thumper, sending him spinning. The bunny landed in a snowbank. As Thumper shook some snow off his tail, he heard snoring. With Bambi by his side, Thumper hopped along until they came to a cave. Thumper and Bambi looked in and saw Flower. He was fast asleep. "Wake up!" Thumper shouted. "Wake up, Flower!" Bambi called. The skunk lay on a bed of dried flowers. He stirred when he heard his friends' voices. "Is it spring yet?" Flower asked sleepily. "No, winter's just started," Bambi said. The skunk yawned, and he told Bambi and Thumper that he planned to sleep all winter. As snow began to fall, the friends said goodbye to Flower and headed for home. When Bambi got to the thicket, the snow was coming down even harder. He wondered if winter would ever end. "It seems long, but it won't last forever," his mother said. And she was right. Soon enough, the weather got warmer, the snow melted, flowers started to grow, and the animals woke up from their long naps. Bambi left the thicket to search for his friends. They were glad to see each other and delighted that spring had finally returned. The end. One more story, kids, and this one is called Bambi to the Rescue. One spring morning, Bambi was frolicking through the forest when he heard a strange sound. He followed the sound until he came to some bushes. Hidden among a pile of leaves was a little baby animal, sobbing. "Please don't cry," said Bambi. "My name is Bambi. What's yours?" "Peggy," said the baby. "I'm lost. I was riding on my mother's tail with my brothers and sisters, and I fell off," she cried. "Don't you worry," said Bambi. "I'll help you find your mother." He bent his long legs and knelt very close to Peggy. Climb aboard, Bambi said. Peggy crawled onto Bambi's back and held onto his neck very tightly. Their first stop was at the home of Miss Rabbit. Bambi stuck his nose in the opening that led to the underground home. Miss Rabbit, Bambi called, did you lose one of your babies? Certainly not, she answered. I've got them all right here. Thanks anyway, said Bambi. The next stop was Miss Squirrel's house. Miss Squirrel, Bambi called up to the tree. Are you missing one of your babies? Not at the moment, Bambi, Miss Squirrel said. They're all playing in the tree. Bambi decided to try Miss Groundhog next. He stomped on the ground near the mound that led to her underground tunnel. Miss Groundhog poked her nose up through the mound. Two very sleepy eyes stared out at Bambi. I'm sorry to disturb your sleep, Miss Groundhog, said Bambi, but I found a new baby, and I wondered if she was yours. I don't think so, said Miss Groundhog, yawning. You see, I haven't had my babies yet this year. Bambi and Peggy went to see Miss Chipmunk. Bambi knocked on the tree above the hole that led to the chipmunk's home. Miss Chipmunk came scurrying out. Good morning, Bambi, she said. What can I do for you? Is there any chance this baby belongs to you? Bambi asked. She couldn't possibly, said Miss Chipmunk. Chipmunks don't have possum babies. Why don't you try Miss Possum's tree over there? Bambi trotted over to the next tree. Before he could say anything, Miss Possum called from high above. Peggy! Mommy! Cried Peggy. We've been looking all over for you. I've been looking for you too, dear, said Miss Possum. Thank you for bringing her home, Bambi. Peggy looked at her new friend. Can I have a ride again sometime? She asked Bambi. Anytime, Peggy, Bambi answered. The end. Okay, kids, here's my last story this week, and it's called Dumbo. One night, a traveling circus elephant named Miss Jumbo was expecting the arrival of her baby. She watched as storks delivered baby kangaroos, hippos, and tigers, but no one came with an elephant. Miss Jumbo wondered where her baby could be. The following morning, the circus crew packed up to get ready for their next stop. Everyone was eager to go, except Miss Jumbo. She was worried that the stork wouldn't know how to find her. All aboard, the ringmaster shouted. Miss Jumbo had to get on the train. Soon all the circus animals and crew were ready. Toot, toot, the train whistle sounded, and they were off to the circus. Just as Miss Jumbo settled down in the elephant car, a stork peeked in. He had brought Miss Jumbo her baby at last. She and her son smiled at each other for the first time. All of a sudden, the baby elephant sneezed. Miss Jumbo saw that he had big ears, longer than a normal adult elephant's ears. The other elephants gasped. Then they started to laugh at the baby elephant. Miss Jumbo ignored them. She loved her new son just the way he was, with his big ears. Everyone began to call the baby elephant Dumbo. At the next stop, he began to march in the parade with all the other performers and animals. Dumbo followed his mother and smiled at the crowd. Then he tripped over his droopy ears and fell into a mud puddle. Splat! Everyone laughed at him. Miss Jumbo picked up her son and carried him the rest of the way. After the parade, Miss Jumbo was giving her son a bath when some boys walked by. "Look at his ears," one of them yelled. He yanked on one of Dumbo's ears, which scared the little elephant. Miss Jumbo was furious. With her trunk, she grabbed the boy by his shorts and lifted him into the air. The circus crew panicked. They tried to tie Miss Jumbo down, but she broke loose and ran away. Later that day, the circus crew captured Miss Jumbo and locked her in a wagon by herself. From then on, the other elephants ignored Dumbo. "I wouldn't eat at the same bale of hay with him," one elephant said. Then they all turned their backs on him. Dumbo felt so alone. He didn't know what to do next. A mouse named Timothy had been watching Dumbo. He went over to talk to the baby elephant. Timothy knew that Dumbo was worried about his big ears, and he wanted to cheer him up. "I think your ears are beautiful," Timothy told Dumbo. "Lots of people with big ears are famous. All we gotta do is build an act and make you a star." Suddenly, they overheard the ringmaster talking about a new act, a pyramid of elephants balancing on a single ball. The ringmaster didn't know how to end the act, but Timothy had an idea. Dumbo could jump from a seesaw up to the top of the pyramid, and the ringmaster loved the idea. On the day of the show, the elephants were nervous, especially Dumbo. He kept tripping over his ears, so Timothy tied them back. During the act, Dumbo's ears came loose, and he tripped over them. Bang! Dumbo smashed into the pyramid, and all the elephants came crashing down. Dumbo had ruined the act. Oh, poor little guy. The elephants had gotten hurt, and they were angry with Dumbo. The next day, the ringmaster made Dumbo a clown. Being a clown made Dumbo sad. The other clowns teased him, and Dumbo felt lonelier than ever. Even his friend Timothy couldn't cheer him up. One night, Dumbo fell asleep and dreamed of flying through the air. When he woke up the next morning, he was up in a tree, and some crows were watching him. Timothy was with Dumbo in the tree. See Timothy? But neither of them remembered how they had gotten there. "Maybe you flew up," one of the crows said. "That's it," Timothy exclaimed. "Dumbo, you flew! Your ears, they're perfect wings!" Dumbo didn't believe Timothy, but he agreed to try to fly. Again, one of the crows told Timothy to give Dumbo a feather and pretend that it was magic and could help the elephant fly. The plan worked, and soon Dumbo was soaring through the air with the feather in his nose. A while later, Dumbo flew back to the circus. Timothy had told Dumbo to keep his flying a secret until that afternoon's performance. When it was time for the clown act, Dumbo climbed to the top of a burning house, as he always did. Then he waited until the clowns shouted for him to jump. "Boy, are they in for a surprise," Timothy said. The mouse scurried up into Dumbo's hat. Dumbo jumped off the building, holding the magic feather with his trunk. See? As Dumbo fell toward the ground, the magic feather blew away. The elephant didn't know what to do. "You can fly! Honest, you can!" Timothy shouted as he and Dumbo began to fall. Just as they were about to hit the ground, Dumbo started to believe in himself. He flew upward and then sped around the entire circus tent. The clowns were shocked, and the crowd clapped louder than they ever had before. Dumbo dived toward the clowns and sent them running. Then he did a loop-to-loop in mid-air. People cheered and pointed. "You're making history," Timothy exclaimed. See him, Timothy? He's always with Dumbo. Timothy was right. Dumbo became the most famous elephant in the world. Everyone wanted to see him fly. Timothy became Dumbo's manager, and the little elephant's mother was freed. Dumbo was happier than he ever thought he could be. He forgave everyone who had been unkind to him, for his heart was as big as his magical ears. Oh, here's his mama. He became the star of the show. The end.